Hello there and welcome to my arty corner here on YouTube. My name's Angela Porter, and amongst other things I like to do art. I particularly love to draw with pens, and I love quite intricate drawings, abstract, stylised, whimsical, cute, and I just aim for pretty really. I think there's plenty of artists in the world making social statements and so on, and sometimes I just think we need some pretty in life. It's also very relaxing, and I'm all about learning to chill and calm and take time out from modern life that can be absolutely hectic. So before I start with today's video, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you all very much for all the lovely comments, which I will get around to answering after or while this video is processing, uploading, whatever. Thank you very much, and thank you for bearing with me while I've been missing in action for the past, or for a couple of days here. Life sometimes has strange ideas about things, but good things this time, mostly good things this time, which is great. So thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed and you like what I do, please consider clicking that subscribe button. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it's also free to click the little bell button next door, which notifies you when I do upload a video. So as things seem to be getting a bit strange and sporadic in life at the moment, you know, you'll always know when a video comes along. Okay, so I've got two pieces of art here I haven't done any colour or shading or highlight with, and I plan to do that today. Maybe not both, but I'm going to start with this one. This is the mandala, a mandala from quite a few videos ago, and this one is the latest one I finished. So I think I'll start with the mandala just to surprise everyone. Okay, I've got here a paper stump. Paper tortillons will do for blending, and I got a couple of matte graphite pencils, picked graphite matte from Faber-Castell. These are blacker and less shiny than traditional graphite pencils, but they will shade and do everything else that graphite pencils do. So I'm just going to work here. So this one actually is my 2B. I have a 6B there, which is softer and darker. So I'm putting plenty of graphite down on this shaded side alongside this line here, and then I'm just going to use this paper stump just to blend the edge and blend it in together, so I get some gradation of shading. For the next one, so we got some comparison. In fact, I'll do it on the opposite side. I'll use the 6B so you can see the difference in the tone and also blendability. The B's, the higher the number with a B, the softer the graphite inside is. The darker it is, but also the softer it is and the more easily it blends. And I don't know whether it shows up here on video. Hang on. You put the autofocus on, so focus lock. This doesn't seem to be a bit of difference. This is 2B, this is 6B. But the 6B has blended a bit more smoothly than the 2B. I'll go back to the 2B and just see if I can get some smoother blending there. So it's really personal preference. I'm going to stick with a 6B. And I also don't have to put quite so much graphite down. So I'm just going along this edge here to begin with. Like so. And then this one. Now, there's no real strict, well, there's no one correct way of doing this. So if you've drawn this along with me and you're wondering, how do I do this, or how can I do this? It's about playing with things, seeing what happens, but being consistent with what you do. So for each of these leaves, these central leaves, I've added shadow in exactly the same place. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the other ones. Well, not exactly the same thing, but when I add shadow to these other ones here, I'm going to do it in exactly the same way to each leaf. And what I'm doing is, for this one, is I'm going to add shadow around the outside edge. Here. And I did pop it down along the shadowed edge a bit as well. Oh no, the other edge, wasn't it? I'm such a muppet. This is why turning it around is important, because you're able to repeat what you've just done. And I'm trying not to turn this around too much because, I know it gets a bit dizzying when you see somebody doing that. So this is the wonderful thing about graphite, is that I can remove it with an eraser quite easily. So here I just want some shadow along the edge. I don't want it to go too far into the rest of the leaf because I want it to be nice and bright, or much brighter than the other one. So let me have a look here. So how are you all doing? I do hope you're all doing fine and well. I'm okay. I'm just really tired. I had quite a long day yesterday, and I visited a friend, the usual friend I go to every 3-4 weeks, it seems, 3-4 weeks. And it was absolutely lovely to be there. Lots of conversation, chat, cooking. And I didn't realise the time, and I didn't leave till, gosh, it was well after 9 o'clock in the evening, and I had an hour and a bit's drive back, and I was exhausted. I'd been to a meeting the day before, in the evening, in person, and I was stressed out about going completely. I wasn't very happy, and I didn't get to bed very early afterwards. So that had a knock-on effect, but all's fine and well, and I'll catch up. Right, okay, I'll forget what I'm wittering about, so excuse me for a moment. So I've added shadow on the inside of this section, but this W-shaped edge here, so I just want to add. I may come back and add some around the other side, but I want to keep it fairly localised, I think, because I don't want the whole of this area to become just grey. The secret to shadow and highlight and layers is really to control how far the shadow goes out. You do want it to fade out, so I don't like a harsh line, put it that way. But I still want highlight. I still want to feel like there's some kind of like layering and dimension. If I made this all grey, it would just be all grey. But here with this shadow, you can see that just by adding the shadow in these areas, it's picked this up completely, which I think is fab. There we go. So what I'd really want to do, and I don't think I can do it, I'll try on this edge, and I may not use the tortillon to blend this out, but it's just to get some shadow underneath the edges of the leaf, just to make it appear that this is above this lighter section, but the lighter section, this lighter band goes underneath the leaf, as it were. This is where sharp pencils come in useful. I did sharpen this before I started, but I have my sharpener close at hand. So I did have an absolutely lovely day yesterday. I absolutely love spending time with this particular friend of mine because we're so alike in so many ways, and it's so easy. But the meeting was interesting, and being out in the world where there are people has left me quite drained. So I was really tired yesterday after that, and I slept fairly well last night. Got about 6 hours, but I woke up and I thought, oh, I have to visit the bathroom. And then I thought I'll try to get back to sleep, and of course I didn't. So, but it's fine. That means I can get things done today. I've got the templates for fanciful birds to finish colouring. I'm halfway through them, so that's good. So I just used my eraser. The lovely thing about kneadable erasers is that you can get them to a fine line of points, so I can just get into the area where I want to remove some shadowing without removing everything. And if I do think that I've removed too much, or that I want to go in and add some more shadow, I can always do that afterwards. That's the one good thing about graphite. Once you've used the stump on it, or tortillon, blended it into the paper fibres, it's not so easy to erase, but not all of it gets pushed into those fibres. So there's still enough there that you can remove some if you need to. So here I just wanted to darken that shadow in these a bit. I just felt it might need that extra bit of contrast. And possibly, let me go, add some extra contrast on this one. Just to kind of try to sculpt this a bit more, just to have that feeling that there's a channel here carved into this, if this was made from stone, that would have plenty of shadow in it. And is like drawing sculpture in a way, which makes me quite happy, to be honest, because I particularly love sculpture architecture and things like that. So that's just helped there. And the other thing I think I'll do is this one. I think needs some extra darkness. So it's a case of, it's a dance back and forth between starting off fairly light and then deciding whether you need some more contrast or not. And you can always add, you can take away as well, but not everything once you've blended it in. That's the thing. So I always think it's better to be cautious and build up little by little until you get what you would like, rather than going full hog. And I did use my razor because these areas were beginning to get a bit dull, because the graphite will spread a bit further than you want it to. And just by using this, I can pick up some of that looser graphite and just brighten those areas. The other thing I want to do is around this outside edge here, because this would actually be sort of a cutout, so you'd have shadow all around the edges of these. But I just want to make it quite a light shadow, so I'm not using pencil, just the graphite that there is on the tortillon. And at a later point I can always go back and intensify that. So I'm quite happy with that middle section. This one I'm going to put graphite, and a fair amount of it, right next to this line, and then I will blend it with the tortillon, but again I don't want to blend it out very far. It's more a case of evening out the tone of this and the width of this, so that it's not too tangled, too messy. So I've had an interesting number of days, as well as it's been a weird week because people I haven't heard from for quite a while, and I'm awful because I find it really hard to reach out to people and say hi, because I know what busy lives they have. And And, there's also that fear of somebody telling me to go away and whatever, which stems right back to childhood, really. So I often let people get in touch with me when they need to. So there's been family members who I haven't heard from for a long while to update me on events there. And you just think, oh, did I really need to know this? And I thought, yeah, of course I do. In a way. I'm not involved, but, I do care about some members of my family anyway, so-called family. And then a friend as well, who I know gets very busy with things and life. Okay, so with this one, I'm going to put shadow inside these. Hopefully you can see where I'm putting it. Not all the way down because I will blend it down, but I want most shadow at the point. I'm using where the line's the thickest as my guide as to where I want to put shadows or shading. And where the line's the thickest is where I want the biggest amount of shading. So I'll just go around all of these, and I am turning the paper. And yeah, in some of them I'm going to get more graphite down than others because I'm still not with it yet. I've had a mug of tea and I've had breakfast. But dear goodness, I'm still not with it. And I may not ever get with it today. That's the truth of the matter. And then I'm just going to blend this, not very far out, because I want to get the shadow a bit further down the outside edge of this teardrop shape, but I don't want to fill too much of the centre. So I most probably do want a very subtle hint of it round the bottom, because that will help to give it a more domed feeling. But it's that top bit that I want the darkest, really. Again, if I haven't got the effect I like here I've managed to spread the graphite over the most of this teardrop shape. I'll just go back and remove it with the eraser. And of course I can also decide that I want to add more graphite. So I am going back. Oh, I missed one there. So I'll leave those as they are for now. I'll just clean the middle of that one up a little bit just to make it that little bit brighter. So that has instantly given us some shadow and highlight. For this one, there's going to be a fair amount of shading going on. So I am going to put shadows all the way round these inner sections up to this point here. And then just blend this way. So this will make this feel that the edges where I've put the shadow will feel further away than the ones where there are no shadows. So we get the highlight across the middle, and you can see the difference because that has made compared to this. And I may need to just go back and just going to add some more darkness there, but I'm not necessarily going to blend this out. My pencil has worn itself down into a pleasing way where one side of it's flat, so I can get a consistent line. So that's quite nice, and I think I'll do them all the same way for now. So I'm going to put the graphite on all of them, then I'll quickly go around and blend them out. So this is real-time shading for you. So as I said, it's been an interesting number of days for me, and these things have taken up a lot of my time in the day. I mean, in lovely ways, don't get me wrong. Perhaps not the meeting, but that's a different story that I'm not going to share. And, you know, that day, Thursday, my whole day, I was just getting more and more anxious and stressed as the day wore on. As there were a fair number of people there, things got a little bit heated at times, perhaps, and but the stress levels will just fall away. Yeah, over the next day or two, and I'm back. I feel, you know, fine, but I just know that I'm exhausted and my digestive system's upset from it. But I feel okay. I'm content enough, happy enough, you know. So there's nothing really to worry about. But so, and of course, coming and doing something like this today to start my day off. Well, before I have my next cup of tea or mug of tea, big mug of tea. Is a lovely way to spend this time. And to finish off, well, this mandala, I may not get the other picture done, mind you, because I think this is going to take long enough. After last week's blisteringly hot, sunny weather here, today it's grey and it's been drizzly at times. I woke up and there was light rain, or correction, when I got out of bed and opened the curtains, there was some drizzliness in the air, so which is all to the good because it'll dampen down dust. And yesterday, even though it was sunny, it wasn't uncomfortably hot, which was a blessing, I can tell you. My car does have aircon, but like all cars, if you use the aircon, the fuel consumption goes down, and I'm very conscious of things environmental and also money-wise, because the cost of petrol has gone up so much, like everything, that if I can run my car as economically as possible, I'll be a very happy bunny. So that means driving in a way that I get the greatest miles per gallon or kilometres per litre out of my car. In the UK, we still work in miles per gallon, and we measure our travelling distances in miles, even though everything else is basically metric. It's just one of those quirks, I think, of British society and culture, which is fine. And I was so happy because I got nearly 70 miles to the gallon on both trips, which is fab because it means I used less than 8 litres of fuel on my trip. So that meant it, you know, in terms of fuel, it would have cost me 16 pounds, British pounds, excuse me, which is great. But it's not that long ago. I remember it used to cost me about that much to fill my car up. Okay, so I'm quite happy with these as they are mostly. I mean, the shading isn't the best here. My ability with this isn't the greatest. It never has been, and I don't think it ever will be. But I know what I'm doing. So here I'm just putting some shadow on one side of each of these, so it's the same side, because there's such a small area that if I try to do anything bigger than just half, it'll get confused, I think. But again, I can reintroduce highlights by using my eraser just to clean up some of these areas in there. one isn't very well blended in, so I can use that just to bring that brightness back. So we're beginning to get some volume going on here. Okie dokes. For this one, it's going to be interesting, I think, because I do want shadow around the outside of each of these. We're definitely going to have shadow along the outside edge. So let me see what this looks like. So I'm just using tiny little circles to blend this out a little bit. And just seeing what this will look like as this section like this. My problem is I want to put some shading down these areas, so I think I'll put just a little bit along each of these overlapping sections at the top and just gently tease that graphite out a little bit just to add that inner shading. So hopefully this will end up looking like I have a bright area here, so it goes up and so it comes up and down this way is what I'm hoping for. I don't know if I've achieved that yet. So let's go and do all of these. So now I know I want to put some there, some down here. And just keep going. I'll do each section one at a time rather than trying to do them all in one go, because it can get a bit tedious, but also it's nice to do things in a different way just to keep it a little bit fresh and interesting. And it keeps your mind working on what you're doing, because if you do the same thing over and over, you can sometimes become perhaps a little bit complacent or not paying attention. Mind drifts off to other things. So I'm trying to keep my mind on this, what I'm doing. Move that down. You can see how these are beginning to acquire that sense of volume, dimension, layering. I could have chosen to do this with markers, pit artist pens, coloured pencils, paint, anything else, but I thought I'd go with just plain graphite here and see what happens. And this ring I'll want to be a lot brighter than this, because I want it to appear as if it's floating above. So I will clean and tidy up as I go. In order to keep things as I want them to be. So there we go, there's that going. nearly done, just the last two here on this particular ring. It's not really that important to actually do areas particularly neatly because we're blending this out, by the way. So where these overlap in the centre, I'm not really paying much attention to exactly, you know, getting them in the same direction because I know I'm going to blend these out. Oops, let's try the other end with this paper stump here. And so that blends out the unevenness really and the imperfections. My advice would be not to press too hard with a pencil, because the harder you press with a pencil, the harder you push the graphite in and the less easy it is to blend it. So it's a light touch to get it down, and if you need more contrast, you can always go back and add more. That's the beauty of working with graphite. So I'm just going back on the ones I didn't do this with, just to clean up where I want those highlights. So again, it's not really a problem if I over blend, as long as I don't press too hard in the blending. And you can see here where these ones, I think these were the first ones, I really didn't put that much graphite down, so I can go back and just darken some of this up and help with that shadowing. And perhaps there are places where I might want to increase that sense of shadow as well, where the shadows, the shades would be darker. So let me just tidy up those lovely bright spots. And I think it's under here that I want these areas to be particularly dark. So I can just go back and add plenty more graphite here. And I will blend these down a bit, but I think there would be a good place to make these really intense. They do look a bit insipid. So we'll go and just really darken them up. And I will use this just to blend the bottom edge of them in, not the top, just the bottom edge. So there's a smoother transition from really dark to not so dark. And that does help. And I also think I'm going to go all the way around the outside here as well with graphite, really nice and thick and quite heavy. Not worrying if I do go outside the line that defines this back border here, because I know I can always erase this again. And let's really pump up the contrast here. And again, I'm just going to go around the outside edge just to soften that edge, blend it in a little bit so we haven't got such a harsh line there. I've perhaps made this a bit wide, but for now it is what it is, and there's certainly plenty there. And I also need to pop some shadow where these lighter lines are here, because they should feel that they are going underneath that inner ring as well. Like that. And again, I'm just going to use this to quickly blend these out. Just to soften that shadow a bit. And that is looking not too bad, really. I'm not happy with this, I do have to say, this outer area, but perhaps when I add highlights to these sections, they'll feel a lot happier, perhaps. That's my hope, anyway. Perhaps I need to just soften them this way. So we have that. Okie dokes. Almost done. I am going to put shadow around these sections. I'm not going to try and put shadow around each and every spiral. It's a background texture, background pattern, much like the tipple here. Those little areas of circles. So I just think that shadow around the edges of these sections will work quite nicely. Like so. And I'm spinning this around way too much. I do apologise. Still on camera. Trying to remember to check, because I do get so engrossed in doing this. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day once I've got this doing whatever. It's coolish out, it's not too sunny, so I may take the opportunity, I will take the opportunity to go for a walk. I spend far too much time sitting down generally, and I'm not very good at getting myself out of the house. But I think that today, I think it'll be quite nice and fresh, so that'll be for later on though. Nothing, no rush for me to go. Don't have to get up and go straight away. And I've got some other things to do. I'd like to get the over the weekend the coloured plates for fanciful birds done. And I've got another project on the go as well at the moment, so I want to do some more work with that. It's which one wins out in the I really fancy doing that stakes today, I think. But we shall see. We shall see. We shall see. Right, this one here, I really missed where that pencil went. So I've got those sections which have gone off the screen momentarily. This, I'm going to add shadows to this in the same way that I did with the smaller versions inside. So I'll worry about the bands there in a moment. So it's round the outside edges of these leaves, and then it's this side here on the shaded part. So we're increasing the shadow very much on this side, but leaving the highlight on the outer edge, and we're doing the opposite on the other one. We're leaving a lot of highlight on this part of the leaf I'm adding shadow to now, just by adding shadow around this outside edge. So the highlight is here, and this side it's the shadow on this side, and round here, and quite a fair amount fading down like that. So you just adjust some of these so that we've got the same kind of thing going on. So it's just a case now of just blending this. Like so. Okay, so I'm just going to redefine or reintroduce some highlighted areas here just by cleaning up some of the graphite. And the last thing is these little sections here, these little balls. I just think I'm going to put shadow along one edge, which is where the leaf would be over the top of them, as it were. So underneath the lower edge of each of these leaves. Like so, and then just blend this so that it's lovely and even. So that, I think, is done for that. Now bear with me a moment, because the one thing I didn't think about doing was ferreting out a white gel pen. I don't have a white chalk pencil or anything anymore. I don't like them, is the honest answer. I don't like them. But a white gel pen is really quite useful because, well, I think they are, because they're quite opaque. So I've just got a jelly roll here. It's a jelly roll 08. Piece of scrap paper off to one side so I can clean the nib off. And then what I can do is I'm going to stipple in dots for the highlights. I don't like lines, but I'm happy with stippled areas of highlight just to bring that brightness in more than anything. And there's enough of that highlight to, hopefully it'll make a difference. I'm not sure if you can see on the camera, it's very subtle. But subtle is me with this, hopefully. And with this shaded area here, I'm happy to let these dots break those black lines up, because that will really help as well with that kind of highlight. So I am looking here at where I want the brightest colour is along this middle edge, you know, the middle vein, and not so much elsewhere. And on the other side, the highlight is strongest along the edge of the leaf and not so much anywhere else. As I said, I'm happy to let the dots break up those lines. The nice thing about dotting is that you also don't pick up the colour of distress ink from underneath, so it doesn't tint the white gel pen ink. So we've got that. I am going to very quickly put dots at the top of these here. Some of the dots bigger than others, just to give that highlight to these sections. Like so. And I am moving really quickly because I know my brain today won't work on stopping and starting videos and remembering to turn the camera on and off and what have you, so I'd like to keep this as short as possible. You can see we're up to 47 minutes. So it's very subtle, the white, but it is there. And let's see if I can get that in some shadow. You might see it better that way. But the dots are there, and it does make a difference to my eye, not so much to the camera, sadly. The print aren't these little spirals here. I'm going to leave as they are. This one, I may not do all of them here, but I'll just give you where I'm going to add the highlights. I'm looking at where this would perhaps be pushed up and raised the most, which is these kinds of places here, where I've tried to leave the highlights. I'm not quite sure how. But I am adding dots along these lines where I want the highest, amount of contrast. So I've done about half of them now. This one, I am going to just add dots down the centre of these areas and perhaps wider at the top, as in more dots towards the top and fewer towards the bottom, just to add that little bit of highlight there. So it's very subtle on the camera, or barely visible perhaps on the camera. Let me try zooming in. You can see it a bit better there. It's quite subtle, but it does actually make a difference. Surprisingly. And perhaps some dots on these here and around the centre here. So I'm going to choose an area that I want it lightest and then just scatter dots around it. And yeah, you can see that on the camera, which is a good thing. So here it's along these brighter areas where I'm adding lots of dots and just scattering them off to either side, just for having zoomed in so you can see what I'm doing. And again here, centre, there. And I'm not worried if I break the black lines. If that happens, it happens. I'm not going to stress about it. If I want to reinstate them at a later date, I can always draw over the top of them, and so on. Actually, this one, I'm going to put a big dot and a smaller one in each of these. So I'll do that very quickly. A big dot and a smaller one if I can fit both in. If I can't fit both in, it'll just be the bigger white dot. So I'm making a statement here of having highlights and what have you. This one I can disguise that little overshoot of black with a white dot because it's not perfect, that's for sure. So there's just a bit of hint of white there. This one I'll do the highlights exactly the same as the outside leaves. Quicker because these leaves aren't so big. You don't want really to get straight lines, I think. That's my preference anyway, straight lines for these white dots. You want them a bit random, a bit broken, so it's more of a texture but still a highlight. And that, I think, would finish this. I really do think that. So I think I'll just, perhaps I can finish this in the time I've got, if I'm very quick. So this isn't going to be perfect. And I'm fine about that, oddly. Because it is what it is. See, if I'd used a different medium than the gel pen, or used my gel pen in a different way, I could have got brighter highlights. But bear in mind, the underlying paper, the colour that I used to colour this with Distress ink, was very subtle anyway. And so there's not a lot of contrast between the grey and the background. Okay, I've got some of these left to do. Not too many though. And I do sometimes do this when I'm adding shadows. I'll break things up and go back, you know, vary how I do things so my brain doesn't go to sleep and I end up doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, as it were. So it keeps my mind focused on what I'm doing. Practicing mindfulness. Making sure I pay attention to what it is I am doing. So that's that done. I'm going to add some little white dots on the higher areas of this. And yeah, it'll most probably break all of those little black lines up and so on. But I'm fine with that as well. I could spend a lot of time deliberately putting these dots in exactly in these little tipples, but to be honest with you, I'm happy to have some sparkle there. And I think that, zoom out, is now done. Let's say the highlights are quite subtle because the background colour of the paper is very white anyway. You know, it's not really deeply coloured. You can see there is some colour there, but it's not a huge difference. So there's that one. Okay, this one, I'll get a traditional graphite pencil. I've got a 2B one here rather than the matte graphites. I've got a pencil sharpener, so I'll just give this one a quick sharpen. It's better. And let's have a look at how I'd approach these. Right, this one, I'm going to put graphite in around the edge here. Again, I'm not being all that fussy about how I add the graphite. The idea is to get enough down that I've got enough to spread out. I am not going to try to shade each and every one of these in. just around the outside would do quite nicely, like so. And I am going to use my gel pen as I go along. And I'm going to use my white gel pen just to put these highlighted dots in some places. Some of these little shapes are just a bit too small really. But where I can, I'll get a little dot of white in, and that will stand out amongst everything in the background, I think. So that very subtle bit of shading has already got this, oh gosh, as I go and do something with that. I am going to put some shadow underneath here on this side. Let's have a look. So popping some shadow under there, because that then starts to lift that central area up that little bit. I think. And then I'm not quite sure how I want to do shadows here around this, but I definitely want to lift this up from what these are underneath. So I'm going to go like this. Notice how I put the shadow in here, you know, before I start. And I am going to put shadow for these all the way around, I think, which will help just to set them back a little bit. Again, I'm using shadow more as a pattern here than I am how it would be with a light source. I'm using it to lift layers, or, you know, define layers, or enhance the layering. So I'm treating it as well more like a part of the pattern, really. So that already has lifted that up completely from the background. So if I carry on working here, these will be, I want shadow underneath these areas for sure, around here and around here and there and there and there and that side and that side and this side as well and this side. Don't forget to take those shadows onto the background as well, because they'd cast a shadow there. And these little bobbly bits here and here, they need some shadow around them. So let's have a look here and see how all of this looks. So I haven't done the whole lot of these, but I'm kind of starting with this as the starting point and working my way outwards in a kind of vaguely logical and sensible manner. I say kind of and vaguely because it is. So let's get the shadow and stuff there. So let's carry on with these ones and get the shadows as these overlap. Different things, this is overlapping as well. So let's get that up to there. I'll put some around there as well. So we'll go around these. So I'm focusing more on where objects are overlapping one another here to put the shadows in, rather than I am adding any detail to the individual motifs. Those will sort themselves out later on. So we've got that there. This one needs some shadow behind it as well. Like so. This one's overlapping, so we'll put some shadow there and there. This one's overlapping, that's overlapping, this is overlapping both sides, as is that one, as is this one, that one interior, exterior, and there. So let's just add those, just sort this out and go back and just blend those shadows out. Again, it's the case that if I overdo these shadows, it's easy enough to go back and remove some with the eraser. And I like a kneadable eraser, but anyone that's got a point or an edge that's fine enough to go where you want, then that'll work just fine and dandy as well. So that's beginning to look pretty tickety-boo. Okay, I'm going to leave, you know, sort of like everything is going to be very much the same. There's going to be some shadowing under this area. If I go to the individual motifs now and start to flesh some of these out, I could do with some shadow inside this, but towards the top rather than all the way round, just to help that feeling that this ring is above the inner parts, inner workings. And if you end up shadowing those little seeds and things, don't worry too much, it'll work out fine. So we're getting that. This one here, this needs some shadowing there. And I'm going to start putting shadow around this outer rim of these particular shapes as well. So I'm going to do the 3 of them while I'm doing one, because it's a lot easier that way to keep track of what I'm doing. So with something like this, it's a case of trying to do the same, all the motifs that are the same. That makes sense. And then you get that consistency of shading across the whole motif. You know, those whole sets of motifs, they look like they are similar or that they belong together. The nice thing about this is you end up with enough graphite on this that if you've missed putting graphite anywhere, you can always go back and add it afterwards. Right, this one here, I need some shading underneath this section as well. Just to help bring that up a little bit. Same here with this one. So it's already looking more dimensional, and I haven't finished it yet. Okay, so with these ones, I'm going to pop some shadow around these bits where these overlap as well. And I'll just put in where these are overlapping for ease, and these little seedy things down there. And I need to put shadow underneath these as well, don't I? So that everything, where there's an overlap, you have put shadow underneath that overlap, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's so much easier to show you what I'm doing than it is to try to describe it. But so we've got this one is above this one tucks underneath, and it tucks underneath here as well. Okay, there's a bit there. Here we need some shadows around those. This one tucks under. So let's have a look. I'm forgetting to talk here. My mind's got lost in thoughts a moment. So, not related to art either. I just realised I just drifted off on one. But I'm using, the way I'm adding shadow to these is the same as I did here. So really, where they overlap and this outer ring, so it appears to float above those little petals sticking in. Okay, these ones I'm going to add shadow the bottom left, and also where they overlap, and where they bottom, you know, so like the outside and bottom left again, around these for shading with the background. So we're creating like a drop shadow here. As well as adding shadow on the inside of these leaves to make them a little bit more plumptuous. Plumptuous and voluptuous leaves, and perhaps a bit of shading right at the base of these, because they do look like they pinch together a little bit, so disappear. So let's see what that looks like. So lots of shadowing there, but that's fine. So that looks nice. They actually look really quite dimensional, especially in comparison. As you can see, the same kinds of motifs at the top here. And the same here, you can see the difference, just a bit of shading is made here to these ones. So while I'm doing these, let's just get these ones, these particular leaf done. And we'll just get some drop shadows and shadows within and whatnot going on here. Didn't shadow the stems, did I? Can do that now though, that's not a problem. So let me go back here and just add some shadow where the stems are. I can do the same here. Over the top of these and inside. Base of those little leaflets more than anything, I think. Around the edge. And the drop shadows. Around these floating seeds, we'll just pop some shadow underneath them. The left and bottom really. And I'll do the same with these ones. I'll come back to those little spirally things in a moment. So while my brain's on little seeds, that's what I shall go and do with little seeds. We've done all of those. We've done all of those. Okay, so it's these ones that just need their little shadows that have them floating. Or the appearance of floating anyway. Floating and drifting. There we go. So nearly done this one. Oddly, this one hasn't taken me as long as the mandala. And yet it's most probably a bigger drawing, which is always an interesting observation I make. I'm also not being as careful, perhaps, because these are more organic shapes as well. And if I don't quite get things exactly right with these, then it's not going to be the end of the world if they're not identical. Put it that way. It'll work out no matter what is the feeling. Don't forget we've got to separate these layers, so we need shadows all the way around these really to help them lift up and off the backgrounds. These little spirally things. And again, it's just a case of putting these in, blending them out and letting that graphite do the work. With this one, it's I'm working a bit more scrappily than I did, but I think it'll be okay, because if I really don't like an area too much, I've got my eraser with me. Right. So we've got all of that. For these, I'm definitely going to make the background within them a lot darker. Like so, like so. And I may just, apart from where they overlap, or they're overlapped by other elements of the design, I think I may just leave them as they are really, because that's enough, I think, for them. So that's all the shadowing done here. Just move that out the way. Pop those back over there. And again, I'm going... yeah, I don't know what to use. Let me have a look and see if I've got a souffle pen to hand. Because the souffles... Oh no, I've got a Posca paint pen. Let's try that. This will give bigger dots, and the ink is kind of opaque as well. They always need a good shake. And to be reprimed if they haven't been used for a little while. Hopefully this one will decide to work once I get it scribbling. Oh, come on. I think this one's going to be troublesome. I've got ink flowing down the side of it because I've pressed it too often. Oh. Fold that over. Let's have a look. Pesky pens. Have I got tissue here? I must probably have. There we go. Definitely have some tissue here. Me faffing around here. Nope, the Posca's not going to work. It's given up the ghost. So back to this. So I am going to continue to add white to these ones because the white inside these will stand out. This is a slightly darker background, so the white will stand out against this purple. And on these ones, I'm just going to put white dots in the centre. Like this. Like this, hopefully. This pen will work on this. There's a lot of graphite floating around here, which isn't always wonderful for it. But we'll get it to work, I'm sure. Okay, so on this one I'm just going to scatter some white in the centre of these, just to lift the colour up, and perhaps some highlights along the bottom edge here, just to suggest that this might have an area that is higher than the other. So I'm going to do that here as well. Do all of the stippling in the middle just to bring that in. That white may make the centres appear to be a bit more translucent, so that the colour behind isn't as vibrant as if it's being filtered through tissue or something. So that'll work nicely. On these, it's definitely going to be a big white dot in the middle of each of the top of the arches, the bigger arches, and a smaller dot underneath. Got these here, forgot about those ones there. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with. I think this will benefit from having dots like this. As will most probably the outer one of these. All of these arches, both the big ones at the front and the ones that appear to be behind them. And that's where I could have put some shading in with the layers. Here I want to get the white along where these lines are broken, really. So I'm getting my highlights are already there. I'm just going to enhance them by adding white dots. Like so. And I can do the same on this one. Like so. With these, I am going to put like a highlight line towards fill that one in. Okay, for these we'd have highlights here where the light would be catching, where these areas are lightest, tips of these little leaves as well, where they're not overlapped. Do you remember the overlapping always puts things into shadow? So I've got some highlights in there. I think I've done most of the motifs or examples of it. This one, big at the top and down, and the same on the outside, I think. For these, rather than try and get a tiny graphite shadow in around each of these layers, the thicker ink will do that work for us. And I can bring out that sense of having layers perhaps, or, you know, highlight with these little dots really. We've got all these seeds as well around. They need little white dots in them to highlight. the white, because this white will stand out, as I keep saying about this darker, against the darker background. I am having trouble with my words today. So let's just pop some white in these sections. Just to bring those in. That's great. And these ones are the last ones like that. These I'm going to actually fill in mostly white. I'm going to try to avoid colouring over the black line. But I don't need to fill the whole of the centre up because we want some shadow there. Okay. I haven't done anything with these ones, but it would be this kind of dotting going on. Again. This bops up and down because the paper's a little bit bent from the water and the heat tool I used to dry the ink with, and the dampness when I made the paper with distress inks and a spray bottle, and you know. So that's all the highlights I want to do, really. Other than what I love to do is pop white dots in some of these black sections of the Diva Dance. There's just something so nice. It's almost like I've got tiny little pearls peeking out. And it just ties it in with the central motif so much. Now I could have done all of these, but today I'm just going to do a few here and there. Like that, just to break up these areas of black and to add that highlight again. But I think that one is done now. So we've now got two here. Oh gosh, this is a long video. It's nearly an hour and a half. And I'm not going to split it up because the techniques, the processes are the same. This one here though, I haven't made these as, where's my glasses very quickly, as, I haven't shaded them as much as I would like to have. On the inside I've forgotten to do that, so I'm putting some shadow to the bottom of these, not the bottom, to the left, and bottom on this side. Actually shadow to both sides of these, and then we shall just do this. So we're shading the sides and leaving basically a highlighted area somewhere in the middle. And I'm sort of like moving my graphite around, so I'm leaving like a kind of circular or oval shape there. So I'm really making use of the graphite to define that highlighted area. And then I can use, oh, I didn't put any highlights along here. I think that might do. And for these then, I'm going to add some white dots just where the highlights are greatest, really. A high density where it's really bright and then not so much elsewhere. Not individual dots though, or bigger dots. You know, sometimes they'll be bigger and smaller as the ink comes out the pen. But it's that density of dots that I want for the real highlights. And again, if they break the black lines, that's fine. It's sparkle. That's better. I feel better now. I feel better. There we go. There's that one. So there's that one. And there is, I'm just popping things away while I go. And there is this one. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I know it's been a long video, but I'm going to say thank you if you stuck through to the end, or you've watched it in sections, because you can do that. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video. So until then, take care. Bye-bye.